Hi, everybody. I'm here with Mills Banji, and we are talking about recruiter enablement. We're going to talk about it through a specific lens. But first of all, Mills, just give us a bit of background to you, your career, what you do today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Adam. My name is Mills, or people call me Mills or Milma Banji. The founder and CEO of Tapin. And essentially, what we do is we are a social media agency that helps employers across the world to attract, engage, and ultimately hire diverse talent. And we do that using a million and one different things, which I'm sure I'll talk about in the course of this podcast.
Great. Okay. So no, we can't move on from that. I need to ask you more. You started this company when you were really young. Just tell us about the journey. Just tell us
Okay.
about like how you did this. You did it with not very much experience and just like following your nose, right? Just tell us about that. People are going to want to
Yeah,
know. It's a great
it's
story.
it's it's a bit of a crazy story because I didn't actually come from recruitment. I came from engineering. So at university, I studied like rocket science, aerospace engineering. Was doing that for a few years. Then I had a few internships. Um, and off the back of that, people would be asking me these questions like, how did you get into Google? How did you get into McKinsey and so on and so on? And I just like walk them through what the process was. And what I found actually was a lot of those people who were asking me those questions were people that looked like me. These were diverse individuals that, were trying to work for these big companies. And I ended up spending a lot of time, walking them through what the process is, how to make a cover letter, CV, how to pass interviews, how to build rapport, how to build relationships. And then eventually I just thought to myself, I was like, I really enjoy doing this, right? I really enjoy doing this, and I should probably turn this into a company. And yeah, fast forward about 5 years, and we're here. Tapping was essentially created off the back of that urge to help more people that look like myself get into the world of work, and we've turned it into a thriving agency.
I mean, like massive hats off. I've said this to you privately many times, but like what you've done is really incredible. So like, well done. Okay, let's just talk first of all about like what are your top tips for any company that wants to there's obviously been a lot of change, hasn't there, in the last few years in terms of companies like objectives around diversity and hiring. Um, However, for a lot of organizations, it remains a big focus. So tell me, what are the like 3 or 4 main things people need to think about?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Adam. And a lot of companies we work with actually get this wrong. You usually start on the wrong thing, and then further down the line, you've got challenges in attracting black talent. But the first thing I'd always say for any company who's looking to attract black talent is begin with the foundations first. Before you can start bringing people into the business, credibility in attraction becomes super, super important. So, before you even get to, doing all this cool content on social or doing these massive campaigns or billboards or whatever, build that credibility within your own organization. What does that look like? Auditing your data, right? Break down what Black representation actually looks like within your company and across the different hiring stages and the different job levels, and understand, what your data is actually telling you. Uh, then the other thing I would think about if I was a company was listen internally, have this conversation with, diverse Black individuals within your business and run these safe, anonymous listening sessions, right? If you need to use a third party or a research agency to come in and help you to do that, absolutely do that. But it's fundamental that you're listening to your employees, you're listening to those diverse individuals that make up your organization. Because the last thing you want to do is run this attraction campaign, bring in a load of Black people, and the people that are within your organization aren't being listened to, and they're leaving, and they're contributing to, what your challenge is in hiring Black talent. So really listen internally. And then the other thing, I think it's a pretty basic one, but just be transparent. If there are things that are working within your organization, be transparent about those things. And if there's challenges that you need to solve or there's bigger issues that you have, also be transparent about those. But it's also important to share a plan, to say, yes, we've acknowledged that we have these massive problems within the organization, but here's the plan. Are you bringing in an external agency to help you solve those problems? Are you having these internal conversations with people, show people that although you have the challenges, you're also working on a solution.
You're just making me think like about what happens if you've done such a bad job of this in the past and like I mean, quite frankly, everybody looks like me. They're all white, male, middle-aged, and that's your
Yeah.
starting point. What, where can you start? Because you can't like broadcast. We've got a diverse workforce. If you absolutely don't,
Mm.
so again, is it about transparency or what would you do then?
It's a good question, and I think it's about understanding what environment is necessary for someone that's black to actually succeed, or a diverse individual to actually succeed in that organization. So, spend the time to upskill your team, your people, but more importantly, upskill your leadership as to why it's important that diverse people are in the organization. That knowledge piece tends to be a lot of what's missing in you know the strategies that we see that companies are deploying. So begin by understanding how to build the conditions and build the environment necessary for black talent to succeed. Once you've done that, and once everybody's on the same page with what that strategy looks like, then you can start thinking, right, do we need to bring in, an external agency, or do we have, I mean, if you're fully homogenous group within the organization, chances are you need to bring in an external agency or an external consultant to help you to build that internal strategy. Once you've done that, then you can start thinking about attraction, and attracting those people. Once you have built that and you are confident and ready to go out into the market and attract people, the first thing I always, always say to all of our clients is spend time with those communities. If you're going on campus, speak to people on campus, partner with um, black societies or societies that have ethnically diverse cohorts of people. Go and do talks. Talk to them about your company, and listen to what they have to say. Listen to their challenges. Listen to the feedback that they're giving you. Listen to some of their concerns. Because once you have that understanding piece, you can then bolster up your strategy and build something that's going to be effective in essentially attracting them.
Right. Most of the work that you do, I think, is like at the sort of organizational level. It's at the strategic, it's about the employer branding and the career sites and the employer value proposition and the social media channels and things like that. But from an actual recruiter, an individual recruiter's perspective, I think that there's probably a lot of ways that we can equip them with additional tools, or we can infuse a lot of like DNA of that type of strategy into the everyday things that the like levers they have. And I'm talking about like email copy and their own personal social media posts and their outreach messaging and this type of thing. Have you had any involvement in, or have you got any recommendations for, like, probably one of the biggest channels, probably one of the biggest marketing channels, are the individual recruiters. It's like a an army of advocates and marketers out there talking to individuals about being interested. Would they be interested in joining that organization? Any insights into that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think if you as a recruiter have been fishing in the same pond, expecting to catch the same fish, chances are that's not going to happen. So the first thing I'd always say to recruiters or sources is engage with those talent communities. There are now, I can probably mention about 20 different diverse talent communities. Engage with them, um, speak to them and understand how they do what they do, understand how they engage with their talent, ask for any data that they have, on black talent, and then actually start to work with them. That's the big thing. A lot of times we see, organizations speaking to all of these sourcing communities which are diverse, or these talent communities, but they never really engage with them, spend money with them. Because they are the experts in understanding those communities. In the UK, there's an organization called 10,000 Black Interns, for example, and they connect employers with Black students and Black graduates for internships for their early careers pipelines. So speak to them. That's just an example of a talent community who you can speak to, who really understands their audience. Um, and then more and more, we're starting to see the rise and increase of these digital creators, right? These influencers, if you may. These are individuals that have tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of followers. And what they're doing is they're giving advice to specific communities around what it takes to get into the workplace. So I'll definitely say the first thing is engage with diverse talent communities. The other thing, when we look at things like job descriptions, languages, and tools, we're seeing this prevalence of artificial intelligence. And lots of companies are using AI to write their job descriptions. Um, and I think there are pros and cons to that, right? What we see is AI can be inherently very biased, when it comes to um, profiling people that come from a diverse sort of background. So I'd always recommend having a dual approach where you're not solely using AI for your, job descriptions and the language that you're using to reach out to these audiences. Actually have an individual who actually looks like the audience that you're looking to engage, who's embedded in that process. AI is great at doing some of the early job descriptions and writing those, but actually have somebody that's from that community review that. In your hiring process, in your interviews, ensure that there are people that look like the target audience you're looking to engage with. If that's a Black audience, ensure that there are Black people who are looking at that and giving you an objective view as to whether this job description actually makes sense. It's, in my opinion, very lazy for companies to just plug a command into your ATS or your AI system and say, hey, could you create a job description that's going to be tailored to a Black audiences? AI is inherently biased. So what you get is sometimes a caricature of what Black audiences or Black communities tend to resonate really well with. So what you want to do is do that, but then run that through somebody who actually looks like the end user, the end candidate you're looking to sort of bring in. Um, and yeah, pros and cons there of sort of using AI and embedding those for more inclusive job descriptions.
I understood everything you just said. I thought it was all really important points, and everybody needs to understand this. Everybody, when you speak, everybody needs to listen. I really do believe that. Everyone who's watching this, you need to follow Mills for sure. One of the things you said about the like about talent communities, you've reminded me that back in 2003, I worked in the marketing agency, which is now called Havas People. And I remember in the area of diversity, there was a company in Bristol which was looking to hire more Black people. And over about a year's process, our company did lots of work with people who worked in the organization around like how can we appeal better? I mean, it was not a very exciting industry. It was like financial services, and it was how can we better appeal to Black people to want to apply to come and work here? And one of the things that they did midway through this was they found that there was a blog. I mean, this is like really early. You're talking about influencers and talent communities. There was a blog which was all about the Black music scene
Yeah.
in Bristol, which was
Mm,
absolutely vibrant at the time. It's probably, it no doubt still is, but it was
yeah.
like that was a very cool place to be back then. Anyway, there was this guy. He was running the blog. He was writing all about music and gigs and things going on and artists and stuff like that. And they just our agency we just approached him and said, hey, look, can we do a like long term and very heavy duty sponsorship deal with you, whereby we buy a load of inventory. He'd never thought about selling inventory on the site, but we buy
Mm,
like they bought something like 15% of the space on his blog and
um,
made him a load of money out of something he'd never really thought about doing before. So I think one of the things that you've said there is you really need to know your stuff, but if you don't know your stuff, get out there and be creative, and you got to really get into the communities and understand it and ask the questions if you don't know.
yeah, and I think, to your example there around Bristol, you have to do that. It's important. A lot of people do what I call lazy recruitment when it comes to diversity. They might read a report which, in this space becomes outdated very, very quickly. We've seen how the D&I space has changed drastically in 2025. If you had spoken to me in November 2024 and told me that 2 months later everything would change, I probably wouldn't have believed you. So it is a lot about going in, having those conversations with experts or individuals that have access to those communities. The main reason is they're speaking to the end candidate on a day-to-day basis. They're not writing reports and going through months and months of amends. They are living and breathing that audience. They are the most accurate representation of what companies can be doing to engage better with more diverse talent. So yeah, I'm so glad that Havas did that and connected with somebody who actually knew what they were talking about and understood the audience.
That's it. Bill's really great to talk to you. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and on Instagram as well. On LinkedIn, I am Milimo Banji. That's Milimo. Last name Banji, Banji. And on Instagram, you can find me as Mills_10.
Cool. Okay, my friend, great to see you. Thank you very much for your time.
Good to see you, Adam, and thank you so much for inviting me onto the podcast.